Okay, let's go. Why is that not playing? Oh, that's the logo. That's why. I'm hitting the wrong one. Go down here. Okay, everybody. My name is Dr. Kelsey, and who's that?
I'm Catherine Marie.
We are doing a wedding show. Okay, with that going in the background there, so I had to get rid of that. Okay, so 2020 was an interesting year when it came to weddings, and a lot of weddings got postponed, a lot of weddings got canceled, and now we're well into 2021, and people are gearing up. They're ramping up their weddings. We are probably doing more weddings already this year than we did the entire year of 2020. And I understand it's not true of everybody, but it's true of a lot of wedding vendors that a lot did get canceled, a lot did get postponed, and rightfully so for the safety and health of everyone involved. So the world is changing rapidly. Love is in the air, and weddings are moving forward. And a lot of couples are doing their planning stages, and they've got a lot of questions, and they're getting a lot of information from several different sources. I never planned to be involved in weddings. I've done weddings, being churched, and my father a pastor, and so forth. I certainly have been involved in a lot of weddings and officiated weddings throughout my life. But I never had looked at it as, oh, I want to be a professional wedding minister, wedding officiant, or in some parts of the country, I would be known or would be known as celebrants. Throughout the course of the years of doing weddings, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about weddings that I never gave thought to. I learned about wedding directing. I learned about the traditions of weddings and so forth. And in this show, in the weeks to come, we're going to be covering in detail a lot of these subjects, what's important in a wedding. We're going to try to take the stress out of weddings. We want to make it easy, affordable, and help the couples to make wise choices as they plan their, as they say, big day.
Correct.
And as a part introduction of that, I want to start out in a very pragmatic way here. I want to kind of take the punch out of weddings, as I do, and I tell all my couples this anyway. This wedding does not create your marriage.
It does not.
A lot of emphasis is put on this wedding. I just signed on a couple for an August wedding yesterday, and they've been together for 7 years. And they just never got around to, quote unquote, doing the paperwork and having a celebration of their love. That's what a wedding does. It is a public sharing of what's taking place in your heart. And in most cases, it's also making it a legal contract with the state that you reside in. And we're going to talk about, especially in Alabama, and a little change of a law up in Tennessee as well that Catherine will share that in a little bit. How to get married, what makes your marriage legal, and gosh, what happened to common law marriage? That used to be a big thing, that if you lived together for a certain time, it's called, you were just immediately, you didn't know ceremony, no paperwork, you were considered common law. Something we don't hear anymore. So we're going to talk about all the legal aspects of it, and then we're going to spend week after week after week talking about everything from photography to videography, to music, to dresses, to all these different components that goes into this few hours of a day we call a wedding day. So as you plan and get involved in your wedding, keep in mind all the investment you're doing for this less than a day of activity that you're calling your wedding. Your marriage should last a lifetime. We have one of those careers, if you will, that we don't like repeat business. So the bottom line is that you'll be working on your marriage the rest of your life. Marriage is formed here. So
Right.
don't confuse a wedding with a marriage. I've even written a book about that subject. You can find it on Amazon. Anyway, I'm not here to promote my books. We're here to talk about weddings. So I want to start out and let Catherine take over and talk about what's going on in Tennessee and what we noted a few years ago, especially in East Tennessee, was going on, and what the government in Tennessee, probate and so forth, didn't like and made some changes. So I'll let her carry on.
Yes, Tennessee did make a law that you must not be an ordained online minister. You must be ordained through a church in order to marry people. A lot of people were getting online ordained a couple of years ago and marrying people, and now Tennessee has decided that that is not legal, and you must be ordained through a church.
Okay. So now, keeping in mind my understanding, of course, when you go down and you're filing your marriage license back with the state of Tennessee, it's not like they're doing any legwork to investigate whether the person that signed your marriage license was actually ordained by a bona fide church or not. But if there's ever something that came up and one of the two spouses chose to they weren't happy, they could create some issues.
Correct.
If there's a child or relative involved, they could come back and say they were never legally married. If somebody got killed in a car wreck, there was an inheritance issue, they could blow a lot of things away if it's proven that the person that did that, sorry, they weren't legally allowed to in the state of Tennessee. There are some states that are even, if you will, harsher than that. In some states, going up the East Coast especially, you have to go in and get registered with the state and
Correct.
approved beforehand to be able to marry someone. That part of the wedding takes on a whole different significance than it seems to in the South here, what we call ourselves the Bible Belt.
Correct.
Now, Alabama is a very interesting, and there's nothing like it anywhere else on the planet. And we have put it to the test. We know what we're talking about. I've done videos when it first happened back in August the 29th of 2019. I did videos on the process that changed. Alabama no longer licenses marriages. There's no marriage license. You do not go down and apply for the permission to get a license to get married in Alabama.
Correct.
The process is that you go online to the Alabama Department of Health, Vital Records, Marriage Certificate. There'll be a PDF form that you fill out the information, you and your partner, spouse, soon-to-be spouse. Read it carefully, fill it out carefully. It will get rejected if you make a mistake on that piece of paper. You fill it out online. And
a lot of people are making a big mistake by using their spouse's last name as their last name. Legally, your last name is not your spouse's last name until after you're married and you have changed your social security card. Do not put your spouse's last name, which would be your new last name, later on that marriage certificate. They will reject it.
And yeah, the bride's maiden name is what they're looking for.
Correct.
It's basically the same information that you would be providing if you if there was still the obtaining of a marriage license. It's just now put on this PDF form. Now, interesting, and I'm going to give you personal examples in the last week or two, but Alabama, you never have to go to probate. You never have to go to any government building to get married. You do not have to have a ceremony at all. You do not have to have anybody stand up and say, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. You do not need any of that in Alabama if you don't want it. You can do what you want to do. People have questioned that. People have questioned throughout my career in weddings. Well, we're not really getting married. Can we still have a ceremony? I thought this was a free country. I thought this was a free country. Bottom line is that all you need to get married in Alabama is that PDF form filled out, printed out, and then your two signatures notarized on that piece of paper. With that said, her and I both are notaries. So if we engage to officiate your wedding, we can also notarize your signatures on that date. The way that works is that if you could sign the paperwork on May the 1st, and your partner may not get around to getting his or her signature on it notarized until August the 17th. What that means is that your wedding date, according to the state, is going to be the August date.
Correct.
So the first one can be notarized a year in advance, but the one that's going to count is the latter of the two, the date. So keep that in mind. So you can do this and you can file that via the mail back to any probate court in Alabama. But each county probate office sets their own fee. In other words, Shelby County is like $85, something like that. Other counties over $100. So you need to check with whatever county you want to send it to, see what their fee is, see how they want their payment. And then some counties also require that you send a self-addressed stamped envelope back in so that they can mail you a stamped version of your marriage certificate, basically where all they're doing is filing it with the vital records. That's all the state does. So you're still tied in with probate. All they're doing is filing your paperwork. They're not doing the paperwork for you. You're doing the paperwork with a PDF form that they require. You're having the signatures notarized, and you're paying a fee to get the probate court of whatever county you choose to use. You're paying a fee to have them file it with vital records at the Department of Health in Montgomery, Alabama, so that they have a record of your marriage. So that's the way it works in Alabama. Very interesting. Got called at the last minute, and what happened with this wedding, was that 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, yes.
So on a Thursday, I believe it was, or maybe it was late on a Wednesday, I get a phone call from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And this is going to cover more than one thing that you as a couple should be thinking about here. Number one, they had a minister in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. This minister had a family emergency, and within 48 hours of their wedding, he dropped out because of his family emergency. So 46 hours out from their wedding, they're calling me in Alabama to see if I could possibly come and cover their wedding because they had no minister. Fortunately, I could, and I did. Of course, they had to pay for my travel expenses, which was, I'm sure, a huge difference from what they were planning to do if they had used someone local. So that's not been the first time that's happened. A few years ago in Coleman, Alabama, I got a call during the week of the wedding, and the bride was in tears, and her minister had died the week of her wedding. So what happens here, and this is something I've always encouraged all the brides to think about when you hire, when you choose a wedding officiant, when you choose a DJ, when you choose a photographer, when you choose a caterer. I've seen from my experience in thousands of weddings, Catherine has too, horror stories. Brides freaking because something happened to their photographer, something happened to their DJ. They got no backup plan. And the photographer didn't have a backup plan. The DJ didn't have a backup plan. We've seen the ceremony run very late because the DJ's equipment went belly up on him right before the ceremony. There was one over in Vestavia somewhere, and the sun was hot. He was kind of in the shade, but his computer went blue screen, and he's freaking out. You don't have another laptop in his vehicle. There's no other plan. What about if somebody has a medical issue the day of or the day before or anything like that? This is real life, and you put all this effort into planning a wedding, and you're hiring vendors that have no redundancy built in to cover your butt if something happens to them. So you've got to find out. Sure, you can get a photographer and a DJ for $300. You can save some bucks, but if something happens to them, you know, if you're paying them $300, keep in mind what kind of car they're driving. It's probably not going to be one that's super dependable. There's all kind of things to think about. But ask, what's your plan? Something happens to you, what's your plan? Oh, I'll be there. No, you can't say that. I had a neighbor night before last, 4 o'clock in the morning, in his bed, dead. Younger than me. Dead. This is life. This is real. If you want your wedding to go smooth, you need to be asking your vendors this. So I kind of got sidetracked from the issue I was headed to, but that was part of why I ended up in Hattiesburg. Then we get there, do the wedding, and the wedding planner comes up and says, there's one other issue. They didn't get their marriage license. So not only did they panicked the minister, and I came to rescue him on that end, but then I've got to rescue him on the no marriage license. This is a Saturday. Sorry, but there's no courthouses open on a Saturday. You're not going to get a marriage license on a Saturday. Well, I tell them it's like somebody got internet access and a printer. We're still going to make this happen. Here in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, they got access to a printer. They got online. I stood there, showed them where to go, sent them the link. Alabama, Department of Health, vital records, marriage certificate. They filled it out. They printed it out. I've got my notary seal in my pocket. They got married. They legally got married in Alabama without ever coming to Alabama. It's legal. That's the way it works in Alabama now. It sounds strange, but it's real. It's 100% legal. As strange as it sounds. Okay, and I'm not going to get in on this show as to why it ended up that way, but you can take a guess of your own if you dare. Bottom line is, about August 29th, 2019, getting married in Alabama took on a new route. And you've got to be aware of that if you want your wedding. See, they could have waited till Monday to get their paperwork in Mississippi, but their wedding date would reflect a date that's different than the day they actually had their wedding ceremony. They wanted that date of the wedding ceremony because of what I knew about the laws in Alabama. I was able to facilitate getting the date they wanted. So when you hire a wedding minister, wedding officiant, celebrant, whatever you want to call us, what do they know about weddings? What can they do for you? And what happens if they get sick, have a family emergency? What is your backup plan? Very important. Horror stories. Catherine carries her cameras with her. Why do you do that?
I carry more than 2 cameras. I can't tell you the number of weddings I've been on, and they've hired a inexpensive photographer. $500 is usually the main number that I hear a lot, and that photographer only has one camera. Well, they drop it. They drop the only lens they have. They've left their camera in their car, and the card melts into their camera, and their camera is rendered useless. And you got
It's
your
not.
$500 worth.
It's not. Honestly, it's not funny. But
It's really
you know,
not. It's really sad.
if you're the bride, if you're the couple, go ahead.
But if you only have one camera, your camera malfunctions. You have no wedding pictures, and you can't do that day over.
And we are in the South, and some people, and we've had this. I've seen it more than once. There was a girl, sharp-looking girl, cute girl. She had the appearance of just what you'd want at your wedding, right? She went out to Best Buy and bought herself some Canon or Nikon camera. Didn't have any experience, but she was such a cutie. It was easy for her to sell herself. And her first wedding, I think she had left her camera in her car in Alabama heat, hot weather, which I don't even know what to say.
That's a no.
And she ruined their wedding, bottom line.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the kind of stuff you got to be aware of. Yes, 9 times, if you're rolling the dice, 9 times out of 10, everything's going to go smooth. Everybody's going to show up. Something else that I get people to think about. If you are working with somebody, you're thinking about hiring somebody, pay attention to their communication skills. These people, and you see it on Facebook, you post, I need a photographer, June the 19th, whatever, and you'll get 50 different responses. I'll do it. I'll be glad to do it. $200, $250, $350. You get all this stuff going out there. And again, what's your plan? If something happens, what's your backup plan? We're going to get into the photography end of it more in a different show. We're just covering a overall view of your wedding planning today and dealing with the wedding vendors and so forth. But do your homework. Think about it. Is it worth the stress of, and we've seen this is a constant. What I'm talking about here is a constant. These brides trying to text and get a hold of their DJ or their photographer and getting no response, and they're sitting there. I booked them 2 months ago, and I'm not hearing from them. And they're going out trying to find a backup plan because there's no backup plan. They're 2 days away from the wedding, and they're not hearing from their DJ. They're not hearing. And what's up with these vendors not coming to rehearsals? I want to emphasize to you couples, it's your freaking wedding. It's not the photographer's wedding. It's not the videographer's wedding. It's not the DJ's wedding. It's not even your wedding planner or wedding director's wedding. It's your wedding. I really emphasize that. Don't let them bogart you, intimidate you into not doing things the way you want it. Take a little bit of time out of your life and figure out what you want. And then you tell your vendors, you're paying them. You're writing the check for their services. Okay? Demand. What's your backup plan? Do you have a written contract? How are you going to do anything? If something screws up and they don't have it, you don't have a written agreement, and you give them a deposit. I know a venue, a very well-known venue in Alabama that still to this day has no written agreement with their couples. That's poor business. You got no way to protect yourself. You got no way to go back and say they promised to do this and didn't do it. So lay out, itemize what you expect of your vendors. You don't know how many DJs I've seen screw up the bridal march, the first dance. Do your homework, people. It's very important. Anybody nowadays can get online and create a very beautiful looking website in 10 minutes. Literally. There's all these templates out there. You drop and drag pictures into it. Guess what? They can also steal pictures and videos and act like it's theirs. Really.
Yes, I had that happen the other day.
There are, now, if they've got testimonials on their website, that's fine. But if their testimonials or reviews are on sites like Wedding Wire, that's even better. You know why? Because they have no control over that. Wedding Wire and the Knot and bona fide wedding sites like that use your IP address. So if I went into my Wedding Wire and I tried to write myself a review, it's going to get rejected because they're going to recognize it's me. Okay, so you can't be leaving yourself reviews. All right, those reviews are meaningful, and I've heard that over and over. I get more money and I get more weddings because of the reviews I've gotten over the years. So that's fair. It's also fair to ask your vendor, tell them you want to actually talk to some people they have served recently. You want to talk to the last 3 weddings they did. And a lot of times you can go to their Facebook page and you can determine what the last 3 weddings were because most people will post that kind of information. So that's, I'm not even hyped up on Facebook reviews, okay? Because you can get all your friends to go in there and, hey, I just started this. Would you go leave me a review on my DJ page? So you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. And clearly, the more reviews and the more length of time reviews have been out there, the more secure you can feel. But things to look for is communication. Is it hard to get a hold of this vendor? I learned this a long time ago. These people begging for work and then you can never get a hold of them. In today's world, you got texting, you got Facebook messaging, you got cell phones. Communication should be a non-issue in the 21st century, yet these people will not return a call, not return a text. You see what I'm saying? So communication is a big thing. So pay close attention to their communication skills. And just giving people things to think about all the way through. So first of all, in this little brief introduction of this wedding show, we've talked about Tennessee passed a law that if you got online ordained, you're not legitimate. Okay, you can get by with it, but if there's some legal consequence that comes up in the future somewhere, you could screw up somebody's life. You could screw up their economics. You could screw up their kids. You could screw up a lot of stuff if you're not bona fide, legally ordained. Okay, so keep that in mind for yourself. Second, Alabama changed their marital laws. They do not issue a marriage license. Licenses in Alabama for marriage are out of the question. You go to Alabama Department of Health, Vital Records, Marriage Certificate. Carefully fill that document out precisely. Print it out, have it with you on the day of your wedding. Go ahead.
I just want to put a reminder in there. Do not put your new name. Use your maiden name. Make sure you have your both mothers' maiden names on that piece of paper. And I can't remember, it says county or country. I can't remember which one it is.
It says county.
County. That's what I was thinking.
All Alabama, and we had somebody
put their country.
United States.
United States. It was.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't remember which one it was off the top of my head, but they put the wrong thing and they reject it even for little things like that. When you go to sign your name on this document, you need to sign. If you take my name, Catherine Marie. We'll go with my maiden name, Wooten. When I sign this piece of paper, I need to sign this piece of paper, Catherine Marie Wooten. They have rejected it for not having the middle name in there.
They've also rejected, and some probate courts in Alabama are pickier than other probate courts, and some probate courts in Alabama are more expensive than other courts. So wherever you decide you want to mail this in, and you can walk it in. Okay, if you want to walk it into a probate, you can. Be knowledgeable as to how much money they want and in what form of payments they'll take so you don't waste your time. That's just some very important things. Most people, I think, will probably mail it in. After your last signature is notarized, you've got 30 days to get it filed back with probate. 30 days, this paperwork's got to be back to probate or it's null and void, okay? So that is the way it is done. now in Alabama post August the 29th, 2019. So again, we're gearing up for a lot of weddings. There's a lot of bookings going on. A lot of people are posting on social media. We need a photographer, we need a videographer, we need a DJ, whatever. They're getting 30, 40, 50 responses in just a few hours time. It can be very confusing. And we want to give you things to think about asking anybody you're entertaining to serve you at your wedding day. And all those things are very, very important. I would suggest that you meet with all your vendors. I would suggest that you demand that your photographer, you demand that your DJ show up at rehearsal. If you're having a rehearsal the day before, just tell them, if you're going to work for me, you're going to be there. Okay, that's part of our agreement. It makes things go a lot smoother. If you've got a bridal party and they're marching from this house out here to out in the field here by the lake, whatever, it's better to have a DJ there, at least in some way, to practice with the music that you've chosen for your processional. Is the song long enough to last for that walk for a wedding party of 16 or whatever? How are you going to deal with that? Is this person effective at what kind of equipment they've got? You know, you should be looking at all these things. If you've got a venue here, where is the electricity to plug in this, to plug in that? Gosh, we're going to infinity, and that's why we're going to do a lot of shows going forward.
Correct.
Because there's so much to think about on your weddings. So we're not going to try to cover it all. We're just going over some basics of the legalities of marriage. I emphasize again this, and you should try to relax, because this wedding day is not creating a marriage that happens here. That was the argument that Alabama used in taking the marriage license out of weddings, was that we're getting out of the marriage business. So having that legal contract does not create the true marriage. You'll be working on that the rest of your life. In saying that, I'm also a facilitator for a program called SYMBIS, SYMBIS, which stands for Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. And it's a very good program you should look into. You can find more about it at drkelseygraham.com. Catherine?
Yes, it's a very good program. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. Very good program. All of our couples have really enjoyed it. They've learned a lot about themselves. It brought up topics that they were having little issues with, and they were able to work those issues out and created a stronger bond between the two of them and work those issues out and make it more with someone else there with them. It made them feel more open to discuss these issues. It starts out with a assessment on who they are, things that they enjoy doing, and things that might irk them. It even goes over some financial stuff. Sometimes religion plays a part in some relationships, and it goes over some situations in that and dealing with that, because a lot of times people are different religions and it may be more important to one than the other. And it basically opens the door for them to be able to talk with each other and discuss these things and hopefully build a better relationship that will keep their marriage going for their lifetime. That's our total goal.
And I like to say, when it comes to that SYMBIS program, that you're investing a whole lot into this one day. Actually, it's less than a day of activity, roughly 20-minute ceremony, and then 4 to 5 hours of pictures and dances and food and socializing, basically, a little bit of a party. You're investing a lot of time, thousands of dollars, and a lot of stress into that day. How much are you going to invest in your marriage? Very important question, because at the end of the day, these moments, these words are all fleeting. They're carried away with the wind. You've got some memories that lasted a few hours, but the purpose of this whole thing, the result of this, is to have a marriage built on a foundation that will stand the test of time. And that's the important part. That's the most important part. Given that, keep in mind that in my role, going back years ago, I discovered that the ceremony, the actual wedding ceremony, is about the last thing that the couple plans for. They're into the
Correct.
dresses, they're into tuxes, they're into flowers, they're into cakes, they're into dances, they're into venues. They got all this stuff going on, the flowers, the bouquets, just on and on and on and on and on. And then all of a sudden somebody wakes up and says, what about the ceremony?
Who's going to do the wedding?
The one that I just booked day before yesterday, the one I just booked. And I always ask them, have you got your DJ? Have you got your photographer? Oh, yeah, you're the last thing we needed. It's
The
a
most
wedding.
important,
It's a
other than
wedding.
the couple, the
Who's
most
gonna do
important
it?
person.
So anyway, what's important to you? Now, from a biblical viewpoint, I will have to support their thinking on that because Jesus did not officiate a wedding. There's no wedding in the Bible. There's a wedding feast. So the focus in the Bible was about the reception, not the ceremony. So I guess they're just following biblical standards when they focus on the party and not on the ceremony. So no matter the words used, no matter the prayers given, no matter any of these things we do in a wedding, the result, what's going to make your wedding, your marriage successful is you. Well, your words, your prayers, what you're doing for yourself. Everybody else can throw that stuff out. They can throw their support. It's good to have a support system. It's good to have family and friends that you can talk to and that can help you to stay stable when you have times of anger or discontent. Yes, those things are important. But at the end of the day, it's going to be between you and your mate as to how successful this marriage is. In a lot of my ceremonies, I always state emphatically, sometimes more than once, that the key to a successful marriage is to have a good sense of humor.
That's correct.
So don't be afraid to laugh. You can do, and okay, another thing we can hit on real quick, we're going through just a lot of generic stuff here, basic stuff in regards to a wedding. In weddings, there's no rules. There's a lot of tradition, but honestly, there are no rules. There's no rule that says you've got to wear a white dress. There's no rule that says you've got to have bridesmaids and you've got to have groomsmen. There's no rule that says you've got to rent a venue and you've got to stand at an altar, and there's no rule. There's nudist weddings, there's themed weddings. I've married couples at a Waffle House. I've married couples in an aisle at Belk's. And they are just as married as you will be standing in front of the castle in your expensive dress. And historically, and that dress is an interesting thing to talk about. Historically, people were more frugal. Brides wouldn't go out and have the most expensive dress they ever owned. Really, is one they wear once. They would simply pull out their nicest dress from their closet. It's one they already had. And said, that looks nice, I'll wear it. So we kind of do things kind of in a silly way today. And we one-time dresses. And then you'll find them posted on Facebook and different places. It's like, well, I used my dress. Do you want to buy it? So you don't have to do it that way. I want people to understand.
I joked around a few years ago. I said, well, we've married people here, we've married people there. I want to marry somebody in the Bass Pro Shops. I have done a wedding at Bass Pro Shop.
Yeah. So the venue does not matter.
Does not matter.
My mother and dad got married at the courthouse. Correct. Did not tell anybody. They didn't tell anybody they were getting married. They didn't announce it. There were no pictures, nothing like that. They just said, okay, let's do it. Went down, got married. They stayed together till they died.
My grandparents eloped to Mississippi, and we have one photo of that wedding, and they stayed together until the moment that they died. And
success in a marriage is not based on the size of the wedding. In fact, historically, the more expensive weddings tend to have the marriages that last the least amount of time. So anyway, bottom line is that you can do your wedding however you want to.
Correct.
I've dealt with a lot of wedding planners. I've dealt with a lot of wedding directors. I've dealt with a lot of wedding vendors and wedding pros. And especially here in the South, you find a good majority of them are locked in this box of a certain tradition. I remember at one venue, I've done a lot of weddings, that they had a wedding director that at every rehearsal, as we started, they would look at me and say, Dr. Graham, would you open a prayer? And I would always have to say, ask the couple, if that's what they want. Because I never impose, I don't use a wedding to impose my beliefs or philosophies on anybody. It's your wedding, not mine. And this is a problem a lot of vendors, photographers and whatnot have. It's their wedding. They're the boss, not the wedding vendor. The vendor is not the boss. The vendor is working for you, the couple.
Correct.
And that's even the wedding minister. If you find a minister that's dead set that I've got to read a scripture, I got to pray, I got to do this, that, and other, that's fine if you're in agreement with him. But if it don't suit who you are, look for somebody else. Okay?
There are a lot of traditions in a wedding, a lot of superstitions over weddings.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of those. Remember one poor little bride, her wedding director would not allow her to practice at the rehearsal with walking down the aisle. This very, very much upset this little bride. And I could see it on her face. And she's like, why? And the lady kept telling her that she couldn't do it. So me being kind of out there a little bit, looked at the woman and said, it's her day. If she wants to walk down the aisle at practice, let her do it. She wants to make sure she gets it right too.
Yeah. Well, the bride is the boss.
That's correct.
You find very seldom do you find even the groom taking the lead. Usually it's the bride's show. And when I'm working with a couple to plan out their ceremony and whatnot, I look for ways to get the groom and his family more involved in the ceremony and whatnot, because the bride and her family seem to kind of take the show over. And it's not quite fair, because it's not just the bride's wedding. There's two people involved and two families involved. On the groom's side, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, the father of the bride is escorting her down the aisle. So I always suggest the groom, it's like, is your mother going to be there? Most often, yes. Why don't you usher her to her seat and then join me where we're going to stand? That makes the mother feel more involved. She gets her son. So it's not just the bride coming down the aisle with her father. It's also the groom coming down with his mother. It's a very special touch. There's other things that you can do, and we're going to cover a lot of those in the weeks to come. We're going to do this every Monday night at 8 p.m. If you've got questions, you can certainly, we'll watch the comment section and we'll answer those. And we may at some point even take phone calls. But we want to take the myth out of weddings. We want to make it very real. We want you to know as much as possible going into your wedding, so that you don't waste money, you don't waste time, you don't waste and have a lot of stress, and you get what you really want. And I know most couples don't know much about weddings, just at a wedding or two they've been to, and a lot of people don't even pay that much attention to the ceremony to begin with. So it's not our position to tell you what to do. Like it's our position to enlighten you as to all the possibilities. And at the end of the day, the possibilities are endless.
They are endless.
Even people that are nudists have weddings in the naked, and they're just as married as you are in your $1,200 dress. Trust me, the way they dress did not affect their marriage at all. And I emphasize it over and over. Being a minister, That's very important for me to get across, is that all this superficial, all this show, all these pictures, all these dances and all the cakes and flowers and all the prayers and all the words, at the end of the day, are not going to create your marriage. It's not going to make your marriage successful. It's really not. What's going to make your marriage successful is what you have right here, and your consistency of working on keeping this relationship strong. I like to say the honeymoon, the courtship does not end with the honeymoon. It should continue throughout all the years. You've got to work to find ways to keep your relationship fresh and thriving, and figure out ways to stay madly in love with each other.
That is totally correct, Dr. Graham. I believe that most of our couples, we do talk a lot about their ceremony and go over all the things that do go into their ceremony. There's a lot of wording that can go into that ceremony. There's a lot of readings, and we get into people that we wouldn't want, and you sit down with a couple and you can talk over with them, and you can let them know, what do you see in this person? Why did you decide you wanted to marry her? Had a groom do this a few weeks ago, and he said, he started rattling off some stuff, and I did not write his vows for him. He asked me to, and I said, this is not I'm not marrying her. I can't say what I love about her and why I want to marry her, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to get through this. I want you to know, the day of the wedding, when the vows were done and he had read them out to his wife, my little heart was just like, oh my gosh, I wish he'd have wrote that for me. There's a lot of fun things that you can do in these weddings and make them memorable, and not be just, oh, it's just another wedding, we're going for the food.
Well, I like to call it cookie cutter weddings.
Cookie cutter weddings.
And
Yes.
and when you do weddings and you see the same things and hear the same things over and over and over, you hear the same songs over and over. You see the same dresses. That you see the same poses in the pictures.
Yes.
Really. And you begin to realize how there's no uniqueness to most of these weddings. There are in a very few, but for some reason people want this cookie cutter wedding, and so that makes it easy for a lot of wedding planners, wedding directors, and vendors, because it's like, oh, another wedding, In fact, the DJs have gotten to a point now to where they don't even have to personally deal with you. You go to their website, you pick out the songs you want, and it's all laid out, and they never even have to talk to you. We've got an automated cookie cutter wedding system now, and the personalities are taken out of the picture.
Correct.
I like to meet with a couple, even if it's on a Zoom meeting, to get to know their personalities. I'm very effective at drawing the couple out to learn who they are and to learn a little history about them. What makes them them? And that way it don't come out to be just another, I can't affect them with the clothes they wear and all that stuff, but I can certainly affect the way the ceremony goes. So it's not just another cookie cutter wedding, but I don't know. It's like, it's your memory. It's about you. Really. Why would you want it to be just a carbon copy of everybody else's? You look at wedding pictures and you'll see from 100 years ago that your wedding pictures look almost identical to your great grandmother's wedding pictures. It's like, well, if that's what you want, fine. But give thought to this. I really encourage you to give thought to making it yours. Make it about you. And we've done that some, unfortunately, and I think it's very unfortunate that most of the time, the majority of them are just the cookie cutter wedding, what I call cookie cutter wedding, because they are just identical. It's just, the dress has a little bit different design, maybe the train's longer or shorter or whatever, but it's all, you've taken and you just put a different mask on these people,
Mhm.
and their weddings come out the same. You're
Correct.
coming down the aisle the same. You're standing the same at the altar. It's just they're all identical. And so, if that really had some true essence of meaning to it, some lasting value to it, I could understand it. But when you deal with the reality that none of this has any lasting value except for memories, um, why not be more about you? Why not make it more personal about you? We've done everything from a Star Wars themed wedding, Halloween weddings, Alice in Wonderland weddings. We've done a lot of themed weddings. Got one that's kind of themed around the movie The Shining, believe it or not. Those to us are very exciting and fascinating weddings simply because they are not a cookie cutter wedding. They're unique. They are built around the couple. They're not
Yes.
built around tradition. And if you really studied where these traditions come from, you might rethink using some of those traditions.
Correct.
They like to say, and I know that most people have got to agree with this, that in my lifetime, the reason the bride wore white, it was said, is because white signifies purity. Show me a virgin bride. Hello.
Over all the years, okay, over all the years, I can only say there's only been a handful.
Well, I can
a
remember
small
one.
handful.
I can remember one Catholic couple, and
Yes.
then, and this is the result of their having saved themselves, is
Yes.
their first year of marriage was horrible.
It was
They were
horrible.
highly disappointed, and they had some rough. I don't know how they're doing today, but they had some rough times because they had not been intimate with each other. And that's my choice, but that's very strange. But anyway, to say that white signifies purity is far from it. The white gown came because some royalty in the UK were in a white dress, and it's like when Prince Di got married. It's like, ooh, I gotta have a dress like hers. Nobody's unique. Don't be afraid to be unique.
It's all a trend, and seems like the trend in wedding dresses is not changing much.
Well, yeah, over the years I've seen it go. There was one year that the big thing was every wedding you went to had peacock feathers.
Yes.
And then another year it was burlap and mason jars. Everywhere you went, burlap and mason jars. And you look at all the wedding sites like Wedding Wire, the Knot, and the Brides Magazine, and all the wedding experts.
Yes.
And it's like, what's trending in weddings? It's like, I'm not interested in what's trending in weddings because I want my wedding and I want it my way. And this is what I really try to get across to people. It's like, don't be afraid to make this wedding about you. Why would you want to? I don't get it. It's not mine to get. But I don't understand why people want a cookie cutter wedding. Because that wedding does not create the marriage. If you come to terms with that, because the marriage is something you work on the rest of your life. In Alabama, I like to say, if you don't believe me, ask Governor Bentley. He had a big church wedding 50 years ago, and it broke.
Didn't work out.
Because you got to work on it every day for the rest of your life.
Correct.
So keep it in perspective. Enjoy the celebration. Enjoy the day.
I've noticed a new trend here lately has been pampas grass.
Yeah.
Let me tell you guys, it is a trend. But let me tell you guys, it's messy.
Yeah.
It is yucky messy.
And that's fine. I mean, whatever. But if you've got choices, you can be like everybody else, or you can have it what fits you and your personalities. Either way, you're going to be married, and the end result is there. It's your celebration. It's your party. You do it your way. We've seen a lot of smaller weddings. Like I said, the couple that I married at the Waffle House, where it was just me and them, their marriage is just as successful as the couple that had videographers, photographers, rented a big place called Grace Hall and spent tens of thousands of dollars to have this wedding. This couple spent less than, well, with a marriage license back then and giving me a tip for marrying them, they probably spent less than $200 as to sit there in t-shirts and jeans. And the only picture they had was one I took on my cell phone as they sat across the table from me. And they're married, they're just as married as any of these other people that spent tens of thousands of dollars, got the dresses, got the tuxes, not taking away from any of that, but just keeping it in perspective. All that's luxury. The photography is luxury. The videography is luxury. You got here as a result of couples getting together and having sex for thousands of years. No pictures. Okay, keep that in mind. No pictures whatsoever. No paperwork whatsoever. Unless you were Jewish, they signed a contract between families. The state was not involved. No preacher or minister was involved. And if you read the Bible, if you're a Christian, you want to go to I want a Christian wedding or a Bible-based wedding, there's no weddings there. There's no wedding ceremonies there. No marriage in the Bible involved a government or a priest. None, period. Keep that in mind because this is where marriage happens. We're talking a difference between a wedding and a marriage, and that should ease what you're going through to create this day to celebrate. Because that's basically what a wedding is a public declaration of the love and marriage that's already taken place in your heart. That should make it easier for you.
Yes. Yes. I have a lot of couples that heard this being voiced a lot. I'm ready to get this over with. And that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
This should be a great day for you to celebrate your love. And it bothers me when I hear my couples say, I'm ready to get this over with because so many people the vendors and their families have bombarded them with all this stuff and it wasn't what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And they definitely need to be stern in their communications with everyone that's not what I want. This is what I want. And this is what we're going to do.
I've seen wedding directors get sulk and get pissed because the bride wanted something different than the wedding director wanted.
Yes.
Brides, it's your wedding.
It's your day.
If you've got a wedding director or wedding planner that is so selfish and so egotistical that they will not do it your way and they're going to sulk when you choose a different way than theirs, you need to fire them, honestly. Yeah. Now, Michelle, I got to thank you because I think I'm going to change that. I'm going to start calling myself the wedding whisperer. I like that.
To me, our goal is to make this day not about us, not about the food. It's not about the flowers. Those are all great things to have. The goal is that you and your spouse are married, and at the end of the day, you're happy and you got everything you want, because every little girl from the time they're old enough, I think, to write, have been planning their wedding the way they wanted it. And it's so disappointing when you hear a couple say, that's not how I wanted it.
Yeah.
Very disappointing. And now, not necessarily one of our brides, but when you hear it from other people.
Well, and I make it very clear when I'm consulting and working with a couple planning their ceremony and whatnot. I tell them, I'm here to give you suggestions. I'm not here to tell you what to do. So I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm going to do what you want me to do. I'm here to serve you. And all I'm doing is because you don't do weddings, I want to give you a big, broad spectrum of a bag of goodies to choose from. So that I told the couple just the other day, and I try to remember to tell these couples that. I hate it. I would hate to think that 3 months after your wedding, you're looking at something on the internet and all of a sudden, oh, I wished I'd known about that. I could have done that at my wedding. That would be very disappointing. So the bottom line is I try to give people as much information as I can so they can choose what they want for their wedding. You can be, and believe me, I already know 99% of the weddings in Alabama are going to be traditional as tradition can be.
Yes.
That's just a fact because people in Alabama are very conservative and very traditional, and they're not going to break outside that box too far. And that is why we have all these wedding directors and wedding planners that are so locked into this box because they've never been required by anybody to get outside that box.
Yes.
When I first started doing weddings, and I make this very strong point, almost 15 years ago, there was nobody in this area in Alabama offering to be a wedding officiant or a celebrant like I did. I was criticized for it. I was laughed at for it. I was mocked for it. And then people wanted to go to work for me. And then people started putting themselves out as a wedding minister. There you go. So, and now they want to compete. I don't care. It's a free country. Do what you want to do. But I know weddings. Catherine knows weddings. Of course she does. I trained her.
Catherine eats, sleeps, and drinks weddings. And yes, I was trained by the best. There are all different types of people. Personalities are different. You're going to find that your personality is not going to go with everybody out there. And I want you to choose the vendor that's going to be the best for you. Think about it. Your planner is there with you from the very beginning till they put you in that car, and probably a few days after, if not a month or so after, they're going to be spending a lot of time with you. That person needs to be very good and very close to you.
Yeah.
Your next person, your photographer, that's a very important person in your wedding. This is the person that captures your memories that you're going to have for a lifetime. This is the person that you're going to be spending a lot of time with. Are you comfortable getting dressed in front of this person? If you're a female and it's a male photographer, are you comfortable doing that? Are you comfortable putting the dress on and then the photographer coming in and doing the button up the back? What are you comfortable with? What's going to make it easy on you and you not be like freaking out over it? What is your day going to be like?
I want something just popped into my bald head here as you were talking.
That's kind of scary. That's kind of scary.
We've had, and it's a rarity, but it does happen when people want to use their fur babies, dogs especially, in their wedding. I get that. I understand it. It does not always work out very good at all. There was one I did at the castle, I think last year or the year before. They had two very big dogs, and those dogs barked loudly throughout the ceremony. There was one that I married a colonel and his wife at their big ranch in Madison County, Alabama, several years ago. And they had their little fur baby come through with their ring. And that little fur baby, who was a well-behaved dog, got around those 50 or 60 people and lost it and took off running. And we spent more time trying to catch the dog with the rings than we did with the entire ceremony. So as cute and lovely as those things may be, think about it. And it's just like when you're using your 3-year-old or 5-year-old niece, nephew, son, whatever. We often suggest give them fake rings. Number one, at that age, they're never going to remember any of this. All they're going to have to reflect on is either the picture or the video. They're never going to remember whether they had the real rings or not. It's
Correct.
not going to screw them up.
It's not.
But again, it's your choice. As long as you are aware that the decisions you make will have consequences. And sometimes those consequences can be disruptive to the flow of your ceremony. As long as you can go with the flow, I can. As long as you can, we can laugh through it. We can let it go. We can have your groomsman chase the dog down the aisle. We can have your father chase the little boy down the aisle, whatever's necessary. I'm not going to be disturbed by it. But just so you're aware of the possible consequences of the decisions you make, because at the end of the day, again, it is your wedding.
Your wedding.
It's not the wedding planner's wedding. It's not the wedding director's wedding. It's not the DJ's wedding. It's not the photographer's wedding. They work for you. You or your mother or your dad or somebody within your circle is writing the check to pay them. And they should do what you tell them to do. So again, backing up to what we've covered tonight as we get at the end of this show, what is their backup plan if they have a problem, emergency?
Correct.
What and are you going to be satisfied with that backup plan? So one of the most expensive things a lot of people pay for in a wedding is the photography. So if you're depending, it's like, oh, you saw the portfolio, you've got a lot of good recommendations on this photographer. But what if this photographer has a wreck, gets sick, has an emergency, dies, any of the above? What's their backup plan? And then what kind of work is produced by the person that's going to back them up? Okay. what kind of work's going to be there? So you chose it because this main person, Bob's Photography, Bob has a history of great photography. Bob gets sick and he's going to send Amber in. What kind of work does Amber do? These are a lot of details that can really screw your day up if you're not thinking. Do you get a discount? Do you get a discount if you're not getting Bob? Bob is the rock star of photography, but he got sick or whatever, and you're ending up with Amber, who you never heard of. Are you still having to pay Bob's horrendous fee for somebody less experienced or less talented than Bob? Think about these things.
I also have another suggestion about photographers. When you go look at their portfolio, make sure it's not a styled shoot. I know a lot of photographers like to do styled shoots, but there's not a lot of pressure in a styled shoot. There's a lot of pressure in a real wedding to get that picture right at that moment. A styled shoot does not give you an honest to God.
No personality shows through those shots. You don't get the feel of the groom was goofy or whatever his personality. You don't get that feel because it's staged. Smile, look this way, look that way. You don't get a feel for this person. You want the pictures you can go back and look and say, oh, yeah, that's Bob. That's better. Be yourself, be natural, and get somebody that can capture who you are and the essence of not only the emotions you're going through. Speaking of emotions, there's so many interesting things that you can do during your ceremony that few people have heard of. Does your wedding officiant minister give you suggestions of very interesting, memorable things to do instead of the typical unity candle, sand ceremony, whatever? There's a lot of fascinating things. So anyway, we've been at it for over an hour. I think it's enough for our first.
I think that's good.
Here. And this is just a taste of what's going to be forthcoming every Monday night, 8 p.m., no more than 2 hours. We kind of see how it rolls. We're going to put this out all over social media. Excerpts can go on TikTok and Instagram and link it all over the place. But if you have any questions, never be afraid to send us message us one of your questions and we'll cover it at the next show. So congratulations to all of you people who have fallen in love, and we're going to help you take the stress and the complications out of planning a wedding and make it fun and make it interesting and about you.
Also, I will give out my cell phone number. It's 205-974-7456. And if you want to talk about anything, you're having a disagreement with your new spouse, give me a call. 2:00 in the morning. I may be a little tired and be a little grouchy, but I will sit there and talk you through this.
And keep in mind, over the years, we've added on, not just started out as a wedding minister, added on everything from wedding directing to DJ services to photography to videography. We have in video and in photography, unique ways to get it done and to give you a product. I do not do highlight videos. I do focus on the ceremony. You're going to have the complete ceremony from different angles, and you're going to have little messages from your guest kind of overlaid throughout that process. You're going to have the first dances. You're going to have the cake cutting. And
We also do flowers. We do planning. We do coordinating. These are important things in your wedding.
so again, the websites are www.kelseygraham.com for basic wedding needs, and also www.drkelseygraham.com, which focuses on the books I've written, as well as the SYMBIS program, of which I'm a facilitator. You're investing a lot into your wedding. How much are you investing in your marriage? Think about those words carefully. Congratulations, peace and love, and we'll see you next week.
Good night, everyone.